In this video, I'll talk about a $2,000 fourth stimulus check that will be available in 2024, with an emphasis on the low income, which of course includes Social Security retirement disability beneficiaries who are on fixed incomes, survivor SSDI, spouse SSI, VA, and RRB. Additionally, let's talk about the intricacies of this $2,000 and its surprise details. Before we get started, let me ask you a short question to which I believe we will all have the same exact response. Would it be a one-off? $2,000 stimulus check to assist you at this time? Yes, you are certainly correct. If you were to receive a stimulus check for an additional $2,000 right now, that would be really beneficial for many individuals. However, let's also be fair because of quickly growing inflation, plus the fact that we last received aid of this kind a few years ago meant that the $2,000 would disappear very quickly. And given how much costs have increased, it's not going to get us very far these days. It won't accomplish much these days, but at the same time, we would all be quite grateful for it. I know I would be correct. It would be very beneficial for a large number of people, but I do want to concentrate on 100 million low-income individuals, including recipients of fixed income benefits. How does this 100 million individuals have any significance? Allow me to quickly go over the specifics. As of right now, there are approximately 334 million people living in the United States. Obviously, it fluctuates daily, but as of right now, there are roughly 334 million individuals, give or take a few million, in the low or fixed income group. Here's the thing, though, that I also want to draw attention to. Very quickly, just because someone receives fixed income benefits does not always imply that they are a low-income person. In fact, as someone receiving Social Security benefits, they may be receiving a very high benefit, and they may also be employed at this time. Relate to everyone, however, some people may be getting Social Security benefits while both working and making a significant wage. Therefore, just because someone receives Social Security benefits does not always imply that they are poor, so it does not apply to a large number of people. Individuals, but there are undoubtedly some out there who are still getting social care while earning a sizable wage. Yes, this is permitted in some circumstances, but we'll discuss it in more detail in a different video. It's a whole separate topic, and I've covered a lot of those many aspects in thousands of videos on my channel. But in terms of low-income individuals, they are covering this 100 million people, which is a big number. Given the current state of affairs and the climate we live in, it is understandable why there are so many low-income people. Take a look at this scenario. It's rather easy to be low-income these days. Actually having difficulty, I read surveys and studies almost every week. You would be shocked to learn how many people are currently experiencing severe financial hardship. I should share the reports I come across with you. I occasionally discuss them in films, but not always. It's crazy how many people are currently behind on their bills, missing payments, losing their cars, and other financial difficulties. I don't broadcast every video or report I come across with you on the channel. We can discuss all of that in another video, as I don't want to get too off topic. Delinquencies, foreclosures, credit card debt, the percentage of individuals carrying balances, and credit card debt are all crazy right now. Watch this video, but my point is that, while some individuals are doing okay, a lot of others are in a pretty sad circumstance. It's crazy out there, extremely crazy to see the economics right now, like nobody has any money. Percent of the population is not doing well at all right? But anyway, this is what it comes down to. You may have heard me discuss this in a previous video, and I've mentioned it again. It's a report that I've seen appear on several occasions, but essentially, this is what they discover once more. I won't go through every aspect of this as I've covered it in another video, but in essence, what they discover is that as we move forward with another significant economic downturn or recession, its sending provides stimulus payments to every citizen in the nation or a significant portion of the populace, such as 85%, as they did in 2020 and 2021 with the past 3 stimulus checks we received. They have continued to locate, it's not a good strategy, and they're just realizing that they don't need to do that. Instead, they're realizing that giving very targeted payments to low-income individuals will have the same stimulating effect on the economy as though they were providing for 85% of the population or writing checks to 85% of them. So this is what I want to concentrate on. You recall the 100 million people I mentioned earlier? Well, that's what they're discussing here. All right, and once more, I would like to draw attention to the specifics of this. But what they find is that if they were to give out $2,000 monthly payments for at least 2 months, note that I said monthly because this implies more than one. It could be just one, but that would be unacceptable. They conclude that there are at least 2, though it may be 1, 2, or more. However, if they were to provide even a single $2,000 stimulus check, you can imagine how much that would cost. It's not that much money, $200 billion. But for you and me, that's crazy money. All right, that's silly, but the point is that any of us would be more than content if we had $200 billion in our possession. In light of the larger picture, which is this entire issue, $200 billion is really insignificant when you consider the amount of stimulus checks that were given out a few years ago, nearly $1 trillion, which is essentially a fourth of this amount. A fourth or a fifth, depending on how you look at it. But based on the news you read, the amount of stimulus checks they've given out over the last several years has been roughly $851 billion. So let's just call it that. Fourth, so $200 billion in the form of a one-time $2,000 check to 100 million people would cost $200 billion, as opposed to the $851 billion they sent out from those checks a few years ago. All right, so you're following along, but here's where it gets interesting, okay? Therefore, they keep finding that giving these checks to 100 million of the lowest income individuals at a one-time cost of $2,000 would cost $200 billion and stimulate the economy in the same way as giving out $851 billion to 85% of the population. You understand that? So here's what would happen. $200 billion would be injected into the economy, which would have little effect on inflation. However, the $200 billion would be dispersed over the entire nation if it were injected into the accounts of, say, every state's citizens. That would be a serious issue. There would be a great deal of localized inflation in that one state. But that isn't what's happening. Instead, inflation is dispersed evenly or largely evenly across the entire nation. Because low-income individuals are dispersed over the nation, they also discover that providing two stimulus payments totaling just $2,000 to the same individuals would save $400 billion, or less than half of what it did a few years prior. When checks were distributed to 85% of the population, and guess what? There was only a modest 1 to 1.5% spike in inflation, meaning that prices would go up by roughly 1 to 1. According to these estimates, it would have a 50% impact on local and national economies, as well as the entire national economy, as $400 billion would be lost overall. You can see the consequences. Strong stimulant impact. Given their level of knowledge, they are aware that the money would be wasted. However, additional research has revealed that when money is given to those with the lowest incomes, the majority of that money is spent within 10 days, and the majority of that money is spent altogether. Of the funds are used during the next month. All right, so let's see what they discover when they send out that much money, $2,000, either once or twice to just 100 million people. That is less than a third of the population. The same outcome would be achieved in this nation if they dispersed this $851 billion to 85% of the people, less inflation. That seems like a very good plan right now. Does 85% of the population still require assistance? No. Does 85% of the population people desire checks, who would likely refuse a check? Interesting reports here, and once more, I want to bring this to your attention as soon as possible because this is all it would truly take for most people to dispute it, even though some do. Costing $200 billion for one and $400 billion for two, it would have the same stimulative effect with little inflation. I don't know, it sounds like a very ideal situation to me where everyone gets precisely what they want and benefits the underprivileged. Does not cause inflation to spike as much as it did a few years ago. In addition, we frequently hear that the stimulus check is to blame for the inflation, but I'm not entirely convinced of that. Here's why the stimulus checks were only $851 billion. They printed $6 trillion, which is a relatively small portion of the entire $6 trillion. What then happened to the other $5.15 billion? Trillion dollars. Do you think that may have happened? Probably due to some inflation, but nonetheless, I wanted to share this with you right now because I think it's intriguing. I love statistics, so I enjoy reports and studies like this one.